Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Info Tap. I'm glad you made it. I came across an article, not happy about it, kind of irritated, and it is something that really bothers me. Sometimes these publications, we like to think, first of all, we like to think that we're a little bit immune to some scrutiny, to a point, right? Veterans of the United States military, served our nation, wrote the blank checks, have certain scars and what have you, and did it for the betterment of our country, right? And you would think that we would kind of be left alone a little bit. Sometimes these publications, and I'll jump into it here in a minute, will write things that paint veterans or the benefits that we receive in a very unfavorable light. And it's not so much that the publication is doing that. It's more about all the different people that subscribe or get information and read these publications as the gospel and go through it, and then they start to think the way that the publication paints veterans or the benefits that we receive. And so here we are. And I'm going to jump into it with the headline here. This is a headline that I saw come across from The Hill. So The Hill has an article out, and I'm going to read it to you. It came out, guess when? On Veterans Day. Thank you very much. So this is from, let's see, Kyle Greenberg and Mark Duggan, opinion contributors, on 11/11/2023. The headline is How Runaway Disability Compensation is Straining Veterans Affairs. Let's jump into it. And remember that how long has the Gulf War been going on? How many people do we have, through that? How many Vietnam veterans are finally going, you know what, maybe I should look at compensation. So anyway, I'll get off that horse for a minute. Let's just jump into this. I'm happy to share it. Not really happy to share it, but I need to share it so that way you can be irritated at the Hill like I am, and specifically Greenberg and Duggan. All right. So as we celebrate Veterans Day this year, during the 50th anniversary of the America's All-Volunteer Force, growing concerns about the federal debt and looming budget impasse and a crisis in the military recruiting prompt us to call attention to the causes and consequences of the immense growth in the budget for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs in recent years. Yay. From 2000 to 2022, so 22 years, the overall VA budget grew from $76 billion to $267 billion, despite a 28% decline in the veteran population over the same period. As a result, annual spending by the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs per veteran has almost quintupled. I don't know how to say it. From 3,000 to 14,300. Some of this growth has been driven by an aging veteran population, rising healthcare prices, and much needed improvements to the VA healthcare facilities. But the biggest contributor to the VA steadily expanding budget has been the unprecedented increase in veterans enrollment in disability compensation, a VA program designed to compensate America's veterans for injuries incurred or aggravated during their military service. The share of veterans receiving disability compensation benefits is increasing rapidly, and it's at an all-time high. Between 1954 and 2000, the share of veterans receiving disability compensation was very stable, fluctuating between 8 to 10%. Today, nearly 30% of the country's 18.5 million veterans receive it, which, oh, by the way, in my opinion, 30% of veterans receiving disability compensation at any level, 10%, is still short. Probably 60, 70, maybe even 80% of veterans would qualify for something even if it's just a 10%. I would like to know what you think. What percentage of veterans do you think would qualify for anything with regard to disability compensation? So I guarantee, well, I don't guarantee, but I could bet that it's over 30%, your guess, right? My guess, if I had to just pick one number, I would say 70% would qualify for something. 70% of veterans would qualify for something. All right, let's go. Additionally, the average annual payment of veterans or to veterans receiving disability has increased substantially from about $12,000 in 2000 to $21,000 today. This growth has been driven by a shift to a much higher disability ratings. This growth has been driven by a shift to much higher disability ratings since payments are higher for those who are found to be more disabled. Well, of course. From 2000 to 2022, the overall VA budget grew from $76 billion to $267 billion, despite a 30% decline from $26.4 million to $18.4 million. And I will tell you that the decline is primarily our greatest generation, right? And of our greatest generation, right, all of our World War II veterans, many of them were not seeking anything from the VA, even though they could have been awarded high percentages for all of their different ailments, right? But they were a generation of leave me alone, rub some dirt on it, and I'm doing whatever I'm doing, and that's it. So to compare that is ridiculous, first of all. So let's jump back into it. As a result, annual spending by the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs per veteran has jumped from $2,900 to $14,500. Some of this growth has been driven by an aging veteran population, rising healthcare prices, and the much-needed improvements in the VA healthcare facilities. They kind of did that same paragraph from the beginning, but whatever. With total annual disability compensation expenditures increasing from $28 billion to $112 billion, VA spending on the program is now 83% as large as for Social Security disability insurance, the largest federal disability program that insures 10 times as many adults. Moreover, since veterans who receive disability compensation benefits have increased eligibility for the VA healthcare services, the program's rise in enrollment has simultaneously contributed to the substantial increases in healthcare spending by the VA, the other main category of the VA's budget. In comparison, annual VA spending on education benefits such as GI Bill is just $10 billion, and annual spending on veteran readiness and employment, a program designed to help veterans with service-connected disabilities obtain stable and suitable employment, is only $1.5 billion. The primary driver of the growth in disability compensation enrollment has been a series of regulatory and policy changes over the past 2 decades, including most recently the 2022 PACT Act, that have made it steadily easier for veterans to apply for and qualify for disability benefits for a broader set of medical conditions. As a result, these changes, nearly 40% of veterans who served in 1990 or later received disability compensation benefits. It's like they're complaining about it. They're complaining that this is happening, is what's happening here. Just to put this into perspective. They're complaining that the PACT Act went into effect, making it easier for veterans who are suffering from burn pits and other ailments, from cancers to respiratory issues. They're complaining that this is making it more easy for them to be able to get the services that they're looking for and to get compensation. And so I can't even believe that they have the gall to write this in this sort of perspective, complaining that nearly 40% of veterans who served in 1990 or later are now receiving disability compensation benefits, and that the PACT Act made it easier for them. How dumb. All right. While one might attribute these high rates of disability compensation receipt to improved battlefield medicine and long-term effects of combat deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, recent research suggests otherwise. So let's read that again. While one might attribute these high rates of disability compensation receipt to improved battlefield medicine and long-term effects of combat deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, recent research suggests otherwise. It doesn't really make sense that to me exactly how that was written, but I get what they're trying to say. So move forward. Veterans who enlisted since 2010 have some of the highest rates of disability compensation enrollment, even though they were significantly less likely to deploy and faced a substantially lower risk of injury while deployed. Only 1% of Army service members who enlisted between 2010 and 2015 were wounded in combat. So, first of all, they're idiots because VA law, right, our Code of Federal Regulations, injuries in combat, right, is this much. Then it's all other injuries. Then it's all kinds of different diseases and different things. So this doesn't mean anything. And the fact that it's higher is education, right? Education about VA benefits and all the different array of benefits that surround joining the military are exposed, really, for lack of a better way of putting it. You know, for many years, when I got out in 97, I barely knew what the VA even was. I don't even remember why I filed a claim. Somehow somebody told me to file one, and then it was just like one more thing I had to do, right? And I wasn't really informed exactly in 97, informed that I would receive some sort of compensation, that it was I just thought it was kind of part of the out processing, to be honest with you. So the difference between 97 and when I got out of the Army National Guard in 2015, right? So I joined the Marine Corps in 93, got out in 97, then I ended up going into the Army National Guard, and I got out in 2015, had a break in service there. And I got out in 2015. And the difference was night and day regarding the awareness of VA benefits. So, and it highlights how wrong things were back then and how we're on the track of getting better, letting people know what's out there. So I'm just irritated with these people. All right. So anyway, only 1% of Army service members who enlisted between 2010 and 2015 were wounded in combat. Okay. Considering how much easier it has become to qualify. So first of all, it has not become easier to qualify. The only thing that became easier was the fact that they added presumptive conditions. And okay, what it made easier is that you don't need to prove that you got it from burn pits. If you were there, you were around them, and you have this condition. Great, you have cancer. We'll make it easier for you. So cool, they're making it easier. Yay, you have cancer now. Have fun. So these people are idiots. So they say, considering how much easier it has become to qualify for disability benefits, and there's a comma, there's more. My other thought on that is it hasn't become easier unless it's a presumptive, right? So new presumptives make it easier because it gets rid of the nexus. But all the other things that you're going to file for, if you didn't serve in any of those locations and have those conditions, it's exactly the same as it's always been. Prove to me your time in service. Prove to me that you actually have a condition that's chronic in nature or has some sort of residual effects, and prove to me that it manifested or is a result of your time in service. It didn't get any easier. It's exactly the frickin' same. It's just that now we're getting smarter and know that it's actually there and that we would qualify for something. other than I got my leg blown off, right? So other than I got my leg blown off, oh, you mean I can qualify for other ailments as well because of my time in service, because I wrote a blank check to the government and said, send me wherever you need me, whenever you want, and you're going to take care of me on the backside? Awesome. These guys are fools. All right. I'm going to read that sentence from the beginning. Considering how much easier it has become to qualify for disability benefits, it is perhaps unsurprising that 5,000 pilots who passed their Federal Aviation Administration physicals are now under investigation for receiving veterans' disability benefits for conditions that should disqualify them from the cockpit. Okay, different questionnaire. I talked with pilot buddies of mine. Okay, people, look, I never flew. I mean, I flew in an aircraft, but not as a pilot. Okay, so I talked with pilot friends of mine, and you know, they said the flight questionnaires and exams and all that stuff are not the same mirrored image as the VA's stuff. So what may bar you from this might not affect that, and what affects this might not affect that. So under investigation means that they're looking into it, right? And just making sure that they can still, look, touch your nose, whatever, right? So, and this was a horrible thing too. I did a video on this a while back. Obviously, if you're not in a position to fly, right, safely with passengers and what have you, or just you in an aircraft, right, and you're not prepared the way you need to be able to fly, well then fine, you shouldn't. But don't scrutinize people who are under investigation because the Federal Aviation Administration just wants to make sure that they're okay, because the VA has them rated for certain conditions, right? It's a little bit, I don't know, wrong. So anyway, let's move on. So why is this a problem? Extra money from the disability compensation program may improve some veterans' economic well-being. However, previous research by both of us, the people who wrote this, and with other co-authors has demonstrated that disability compensation has significantly lowered veterans' employment. The program's impact on health is also mixed. Despite the increase in disability compensation enrollment and corresponding growth in VA expenditures, veterans' mental health, measured by suicide rates, has deteriorated relative to non-veterans of the same age and gender, another trend that is not explained by combat deployments. While some recent studies find evidence that disability compensation improves engagement in preventive care and may decrease hospitalizations among Vietnam-era veterans with diabetes, there is little evidence that it reduces veterans' mortality or improves other measurable health outcomes. I would say that compensation helps to alleviate some financial stress. Stress could become a major impact on your health, causing more issues for somebody. Having VA compensation also opens up the doorway to the VA for health care, of which many veterans will continue to be seen because they want to continue to document their conditions, and in the event their conditions get worse, they will end up filing for increases in that. So that means that the veterans are going to see a doctor more regularly than if they were not enrolled in VA healthcare, which again, the conduit to that was veterans compensation, disability compensation. So I don't know, whatever. Let's move on. And if disability compensation growth is attributed to deteriorations in veterans' health rather than to policies that make it easier for veterans to qualify for disability, then it may inadvertently feed a broken veteran narrative that continues to the military's worst recruiting crisis since the advent of the all-volunteer force. So again, it doesn't, the policies only made it easier for presumptive conditions are easier because medical evidence shows that if you were here, you are extremely likely to experience this cancer, this disease, that disease. So if presumptives are what they're talking about, they can shove it because this is going to be you were in a combat zone and you came down with a condition, cancer or disease. So they can shove it for making that easier, right? These two people. So that's that piece. And then because of that twist in their mindset of making it easier, they think that they're saying that veterans are like, wow, this is so easy. I'm going to go file, all these claims and get awarded, and I'm just gonna be that broken veteran, right? And I'll tell you that the broken veteran thing has zero. I think zero effect on the military's worst recruiting crisis ever. I already know what your guys' answers are going to be. I'd love to see it if you hung on. So, what do you think is attributing to the military's worst recruiting crisis since the advent of the all-volunteer force? I don't think it's because people are getting VA compensation. I sure as hell don't think that, because I, as a broken veteran, have had many conversations with potential recruits. And not one of them said, well, I might get GERD or I might get, insomnia. Yeah. I might. Look, everybody who signed up with the military already knows that you're writing a blank check. S can happen. So let's move on. In fact, recent surveys cite concerns about physical injury and psychological distress as the top two reasons youth don't consider joining the military. Well, guess what? The people that so here's my answer to that. Okay. I know that's different than what I was just saying, but here you go. 1%-ish, whatever the percent is, right? A very small percent of people join the military. So when you survey 1,000 kids, a lot of them are going to say stuff like that because they're not the 1%. You need to talk to all the ones who consider joining, or the demographic of kids that typically would join. Maybe children of veterans, maybe children of military members, maybe people on different team sports, maybe people who are ROTC, maybe people, or JROTC even, maybe people who are Boy Scouts, right? Or Girl Scouts, that type of stuff, right? Talk to those people. Do a survey from them and see what it would be. All right, moving on. Let's see here. Unfortunately, such narratives crowd out other research which finds that Army service increases average earnings in the 19 years after enlisting by over $4,000, with Black service members and those from disadvantaged backgrounds experiencing even larger gains. If VA spending per veteran had remained the same in inflation-adjusted terms since 2000, its total budget would have been about $60 billion in 2022 rather than $267 billion, and growing rapidly. We are not arguing for cuts to the VA's budget. On the contrary, broad bipartisan support for veterans, including generous spending for veterans' health care, education benefits, and other supportive services, may help explain why military service increases earnings, and while combat deployments though they increase soldiers' risk for death and injury, have few harmful long-term effects on well-being. But it's time to ask if increasingly generous disability compensation program that has significantly reduced employment among our veterans and bears no resemblance to the program that existed throughout the latter half of the 20th century is the best way to reward and honor Americans' veterans while also inspiring today's young adults to serve their country in the armed forces. I'm going to read that last one again if you hung on because you're actually interested in this. But it's time to ask if increasingly generous disability compensation program that has significantly reduced employment among our veterans had and bears no resemblance to the program that existed throughout the latter half of the 20th century is the best way to reward and honor America's veterans while also inspiring today's young adults to serve their country in the armed forces. So in other words, what he's saying is cut the disability compensation for any, we won't even say any, cut back the disability compensation benefits for the majority of disabilities received, whether cancers or other diseases and illnesses that are, oh, by the way, what the VA would be considering service-connected, manifesting or as a result of your time in service. So cut that way back, make it to where you can't actually have that supplement your income, and maybe give you a certificate or something instead and reward you that way. And then that will force you to have to go work, even though your disabilities are kind of preventing you from working. So what I say to this Kyle Greenberg is that's going to be a great way to increase veteran homelessness. And that's going to be a great way to help really skyrocket veteran suicide. So good job, Associate Professor of Economics in West Point's Department of Social Sciences, is what I say to you, Kyle Greenberg. Mark Duggan is the Tryon Director at Stanford Institute for Economic Policy and Research. And so I say to you the same thing, sir. So I think that you guys are off base and headed the wrong direction with regard to this. And oh, by the way, as a reminder, this there is no making it easier, and it is not any easier than it was in the latter half of the 20th century. It is the education has increased. Those that understand what disabilities are available to claim as disabilities through the VA. The curtain has been pulled up. Veterans are more aware now than ever, thanks to all of the outreach and efforts made. And I think that the only thing that got easier was some presumptive conditions, a handful, by the way, for specific combat veterans. So for you to say this, Kyle Greenberg and Mark Duggan, that making it easier only infers to presumptive conditions, which means that you too are pointing out combat veterans who came down with cancers and diseases from combat service, that they were given an easier road to VA disability, and that shouldn't happen. Is a disgrace on both of you. So do a little more research, because that's what you do, and have a better talking point than that, because that is wrong on so many levels, and I think that the veteran community does not appreciate it. That's what I think. So thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you. Have a great one, and remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.